Hey guys, so you've probably have seen my previous video on me making that firewood Loki mask from the popular Jim Carrey movie The Mask, and also Son of the Mask. So I should probably just let you all know that that wasn't the only mask that I've made so far. Yes, I have a mask collection that I've made. If you want to see all of these other masks that I've made some highlights on my Instagram page. You could follow me on that at gman_356. Right, so I thought it would probably be best to show you all my current mask collection, in which I haven't made any videos on, but I would probably explain to you on how I made them as I present them to you. So, please, don't go anywhere, and now I will show you my mask collection. Right, so to start off, here is the first one that I've made. Move the camera back a little. This one here is what I like to call freshly carved. Basically, it's supposed to represent like a freshly carved mask, just been made, like from a tree. Now, if you haven't seen in my previous video, I always do a wood grain effect at the back of my mask, and you can see here that's my initial that I engraved. How I started this off with just being a plain mask. I had to make some further detailing to it because when I casted this, it didn't have much wood grain effect, so I had to add some extra ones to it. This metal piece here, I had to make sure that I added a proper metallic silver. What I basically done is that this is just like regular silver, but the silver that I was using was a little bit too bright, so I added a little bit of black paint to it. Now, the L that I've added on the top part here, that was sculpted out of polymer clay, as you saw in my previous video when I was making the firewood mask. Yeah, normally I sculpt them by hand because like I want to make sure that I keep it authentic. This was a really good looking L that I did on the top here, which is also hot glued in place. Right, so the next one I have right here, this is my second one. It's what I call overtime, which as you can see here, you can see why it's called overtime. It's because this is what the mask looks like after all those years ago. Basically, this is like somewhat more movie accurate, but in my own design. You can see there is some differences when it comes to the painting of it and other certain details. Like, for example, the L here is a lot more different than the L on my freshly carved mask. So, yeah, this L part was also sculpted by hand in polymer clay. And also, the sculpt of the actual mask itself is a little bit different. I mean, it does look very similar to my other mask, but the only sculpt difference about this is this little curve here. As you can see, if you place them like side by side here, you can see my first mask has this edge to it and it doesn't curve up to like the very bottom of the mask, whereas this one, it curves just a little bit too early. I mean, it's not a very bad defect, but I probably could have done a lot better as I casted this mask. Now, the metal piece, I had to try my best to give it a nice rust effect as I possibly could. And also the moss effect that I gave, I had to use like different shades of green. Like you could probably see around here, it's like darker, and around here is lighter. I used different shading and tried to blend them in as I possibly could. I even had to do the same on the back of the mask, and like you can also see that there is another shape effect. I mean, like a noticeable difference when it comes to the two different masks. Like as you can see in my freshly carved, this one is a lot more curved, and this one is a lot more of an open curve. Right, so the next one that I have right here is what I call the 210 mask. basically that this mask is supposed to be a representation of the famous YouTuber Lance210. Now, I wanted to make it as close as possible as I could get it to like Lance Stewart's merchandise. Meaning I had to make sure that it totally suits his theme while making sure that I don't lose this mask effect. Meaning like the certain details that I had to add is not only just the 210 that goes onto the top part, but also adding this like spray paint effect that spells out Lance's name, as it does technically have on his merchandise. I mean, it's not totally relatable to Lance's merch, but I got it as close as possible as I could. And like, as I was making this mask, there was this one time where I added like this white eyeline around the mask, and like that didn't really look as good as I thought it would be, so I went ahead and just got rid of that by covering it with the same black paint, and then like redoing the spray paint effect. Like on one of my highlights in Instagram, it didn't really have much spray paint around here. Yeah, you could see I had to redo that spray paint effect. And during that, the white paint kind of seeped through, and like it really did give a nice effect, so I wanted to keep that by spraying on the gloss to seal in that paint. Now, some parts have to be white and have to be black. Like, for example, these little divots are painted black just to make sure that it really has the nice effect. And so the next one that I have right here is the Flash mask, which you can basically see that this is supposed to be a representation of the famous Scarlet Speedster, the Flash. Now, I wanted to give this mask the exact Flash details that it had. Like, for example, the red paint I use, it's an acrylic paint that I use. It's called Scarlet, which is definitely giving the perfect representation of the Scarlet Speedster itself. Now, it was definitely also the first time that I worked with gold paint. And when I first bought the gold paint that I used for this mask, I thought it would be a little too bright. But when I tried it out and as it dried over time, it definitely gave it a nice gold effect. And for this particular detailing I add here, I wanted to make sure that these divots were painted gold as well, but also making them very, very visible. Also, like, I had to paint the top part of this top piece here red, and adding an old line to it around the edges. Also adding in other bits of gold on the edges of the mask as well, which just gives it a pop. Now, the emblem that goes at the top here was very, very difficult for me to do by hand. But I'm really glad that I was able to sculpt this part and bake it at the right time. I had to put this piece on separately because with all my other masks, I always put on the L's as I'm giving them a nice coat of gray primer, but I had to do this one separately because I wanted to make sure I added this gold line at this circle piece here. And so for my final mask, which you've seen from my previous video, is the firewood mask. Now, the only way that I can try to describe this mask is that it's supposed to resemble wood after it has been set on fire. You know, like firewood, like used in barbecues or for campsites. Now, I wanted to make sure that I gave it a really nice ash effect. And so I did that as I possibly could. Like you saw me with a sponge brush trying to blend in all the certain grays. I had to make sure that the lines and the little crevices here were painted black. For these little fire effects, I used a fluorescent orange. And that was also the first time that I worked with fluorescent colors. Now, for this metal piece here, this is supposed to represent a molten metal effect. Like you could see right here, the fluorescent yellow and the fluorescent orange mixed in with some scarlet red, which is supposed to represent a nice looking molten metal effect. It's not bad for my first time, but obviously I could have done a little bit better. Now, I really like for what I did with this mask's L. It definitely fits inside the circle piece indefinitely. And I could have added like a little bit of orange and red to this part, but I didn't want to screw up the effects as I did it on the edges here. Now, I left the back totally untouched, like because like whenever a piece of wood is set on fire, it normally just burns like at the top, not the bottom, and it doesn't spread down towards it like that. Thought that would be a really nice effect. Oh, and also I put on a very different sealant onto this mask because like with all of the other masks that I have done so far is that it has a nice shiny reflective surface onto it. Whereas this one, it doesn't have a reflective surface because I used a different gloss to seal the paint. And I had one gloss that has a reflective surface and one that hasn't, which I would use on this one, so that way the effect of like burning wood is not shiny and glossy and wet. It's like totally rough and dry. And so there you have it, guys. Now you have seen my entire mask collection so far. Yes, I have only made 5 of these masks, but however, I will be making more in the future. If you wish to see more of me making these DIY mask tutorial videos, then please subscribe to my channel and turn the little bell on so that way you don't miss out on any notifications. Also, if you wish to see my highlights that I've done with my masks so far, then please follow me on Instagram at gman_356. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you all in the next video.